Um, I want to talk about the year that I met Andre Dawson. Um, it was in 1987. Um, it was during the All Star break, I believe. It was when I was living in Miami, Florida. Um, I was 8 years old. I was crazy about baseball in 1987. It was a huge year for baseball. It was one of those years where they said the ball was juiced. It was a whole lot of home runs being hit that year. It was unbelievable. There was multiple players with 30 home runs, 40 home runs, um, and at that time, baseball never seen anything like it before, ever. So this was a year where the home runs just exploded. Um, so I met Andre Dawson in 1987. You got to remember, this is my first time ever seeing anybody famous in person, ever. So this is how it got started. So I went to work with my dad um, in Miami, Florida. I forgot where it was at, but it was in Miami. It might have been like downtown Miami, but we ended up going to Home Depot to pick up some lumber, to pick up some wood. Um, so we go to Home Depot in Miami, Florida, to pick up some lumber, and we picked it up. Picked up a few other items. So we get back in the parking lot, and this is during the daytime. You know, it was like, I don't know, 12 in the afternoon or something like that, maybe 11. Well, actually, it was a little bit earlier. It was like maybe 10 o'clock in the morning. So we pick up our lumber. So we're in the parking lot, um, just walking back to our car, and I hear somebody say, "Excuse me, Andre, are you Andre Dawson?" And I heard it. So I immediately turned to my left, and I see this Jeep there. And you gotta remember, I'm a kid, man. So I'm like, I had rabbit ears. I'm going crazy right now. And I immediately turned to my dad and I said, "Daddy, Daddy, there's Andre Dawson. There's Andre Dawson." And you gotta remember, Andre Dawson was huge at the time. This was during the All Star break. He had like 47 home runs. He finished the year with like 49 home runs. I think at the All Star break, he had like some crazy number, like 30 home runs at the All Star break or something like that. I could be wrong, but so I said, "Daddy, Daddy, there's Andre Dawson." So I grabbed him. I grabbed my dad by the arm, and my dad's like, "Where?" So I turned my left, and I was like, "Right there, right there." So we go running to his Jeep, and when we get there, there's another white guy there. I don't know who it was. I guess he was asking for an autograph. So like I said, Andre Dawson was huge at the time. It was like meeting Elvis or God or Jesus Christ, man. Because at that time, man, I was crazy about baseball. America was crazy about baseball. This is 1987 in Miami, Florida. I'm a kid. It was a huge deal, huge deal. So we get up there, and Andre Dawson, he's still rocking the Jerry curl, man. Jerry curl's just gleaming right now. I can see my reflection in his Jerry curl. So we get to his Jeep, and I didn't know what to say. I get down to Dawson. I'm smiling the whole time. Uh, I can't stop grinning. I didn't know what to say, but I'm like in awe of him. Because Andre Dawson was like God back then, 1987. His biggest year ever, his best year ever. He finished the year with 49 home runs, MVP, the whole 9 yards. So my dad asked him, can we get your autograph? And we didn't have anything on us because this was totally unexpected. In a parking lot in Miami, Florida, 1987. You know, I'm going crazy. I'm smiling like a like a daffodil, like a little kid, man. I'm going nuts. So we didn't have a baseball on us or anything. I don't even think we had a pen on us. So Andre Dawson had a pen. He signs a piece of paper. Uh, my dad happened to have a piece of paper. And Andre Dawson signed it, and I shook Andre Dawson's hand, and it was like shaking God's hand. I mean, I remember the strength of his hand. He was about to rip my arm off, man. Um, and this is when he got hit in the jaw by Eric Shaw in 1987 when he got beamed in the face. Um, it was during that time, you know. Uh, I believe it was the All Star break, and I think he was just, because he's from Miami, Florida, so he was at home, just chilling, and he happened to be at Home Depot. So we got his autograph on a piece of paper. To this day, I cannot find that piece of paper. It's 2020. I wish we'd have held on to that paper. I don't know what happened to that paper. Uh, Knowing my dad, he probably sold it. But and I remember seeing Andre Dawson. And I remember we got back to the job, and I told everybody at the job, and I'm a kid. Oh, I can't believe I just met Andre Dawson. We met Andre Dawson. We met Andre Dawson. And it was a huge deal to me. Um, it was just a day I never forget, man. Um, it was my first time ever meeting anybody famous. Uh, so it was just a huge deal to me. Um, and we got home. I told my mom. I told my sister. They couldn't believe it. And back then, the Cubs weren't that good either. The Cubs stunk, man. They stunk. And all they had was Andre Dawson, Ryan Sandberg, Rafael Palmeiro, Greg Maddux. That's basically their team right there. That was their team. I remember, I was a Mets fan, and back then the Mets were good. Oh, they were good. They were like gods back then, man. And I remember the Cubs used to go to Wrigley Field, and this is before the Wrigley Field had night games. The Mets used to go into Wrigley Field. It was guaranteed to take at least 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 um, from the Cubs back then to go in Wrigley Field. And the Mets would always have a breakout game at Wrigley Field. There was always that one game where the Mets would score like 15 runs, 12 runs, 10 runs against the Cubs because the Cubs stunk back then. But it was just a day that I never forget. It's a day that I still think about. I'll never forget, man. A few years later, we actually wrote Andre Dawson. I actually wrote a letter to Andre Dawson, and I told him what happened. And I put a baseball card in the envelope, and I mailed it to Andre Dawson. I don't know how we got the address. This was the day. This was days, before the internet. But somehow, Andre Dawson got the letter, and there was a baseball card in there. We put the baseball card in there. We mailed it to Andre Dawson. He signed it. He signed it back. And to this day, I don't know what happened to that baseball card. It was a 1989 Topps card, I believe. It might have been a 1990s card. I can't remember. But anyway, Andre Dawson signed it. That card is probably worth like $500 right now, man. Um, I wish I would have kept a lot of things from the 80s, man. I was a big collector of Star Wars men too. I had all the Star Wars action figures back then, man. I had them all, and I don't know what happened to those Star Wars men. I think my mother sold them, or they got lost when we moved to Chicago. Uh, I just wanted to share that story.